Sonic 2 handles stubborn stains, embarrassing bald spots, no problem. It even slices and dices, makes thousands of julienne fries. But wait, you can play it too.
Wow. That's almost as iconic as...
A bit more exciting, a bit more challenging, a bit more graphic, a bit more colorful, a bit more realistic, a bit more levels, a bit more secret, a bit more enemies.
Now that Sonic had a strong presence in the gaming space, Sega had to strike while the iron was hot with a sequel. Not just any sequel, one that would blow the original out of the water, lest they wished to succumb to the same fate other mascot platformers Sonic paved the way for would fall in, like Bubsy. What's more, Sonic 2 had to have some new lifeblood poured into it before the guy who invented Labyrinth Zone gets any more funny ideas. And as such, Sega of America formed the Sega Technical Institute, where Sonic 2 could be developed with a mixture of Japanese and American developers. While it was a strenuous and stressful time due to language and culture differences, Sonic 2 managed to meet deadlines and come out on November 24th, 1992, also known as Sonic Tuesday. Sonic 2 received accolades beyond compare to its predecessor, and increased sales of the Sega Genesis exponentially. But is it still good, or was it overhyped due to the fact that Sonic was new? You know how it goes around here. From the top! After Sonic's victory over Dr. Robotnik in freeing Little Planet, Sonic takes his plane to West Island in search of the Chaos Emeralds. Once there, he discovers that not only is Dr. Robotnik back up to his old tricks, but he's taken a page from Emperor Palpatine and building his own moon.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
Sorry, space station. The Death Egg.
What?
Thankfully, Sonic isn't the only one on this adventure, as he has a new friend in the form of Miles Prower, although everyone I know calls him Tails. And wouldn't you know it, Tails is just as good of an IQ as Dr. Robotnik and uses his twin tails to fly and keep up with Sonic. Not only does he follow Sonic around wherever he goes, but if you plug in a second controller, you can straight up control Tails, or alternatively, you can choose to play as Tails alone in the options. No way to play as Tails in the lead with Sonic in the back though. In any case, Tails would go on to become one of the most iconic sidekicks in gaming next to Luigi and Diddy Kong. Controls wise, everything is here and accounted for, but Sonic controls much better, due to the fact that the spin dash is now actually good, although as a compromise, they got rid of the super peel out. Unfortunately, while Tails can fly when being controlled by the AI, the player can't do that at all, but I'm guessing that's more so for balancing purposes. With all that out of the way, this is Sonic 2 on my actual Sega Genesis. But before we get into that, Sonic 2 introduces some multiplayer, where you and a friend can race to the finish. The cool thing about these is that they're not just condensed levels, they're the full levels from single player, just with remixed music. And while they're usually fine, Casino Night's two-player theme is... However, that's the exception rather than the rule here regarding the soundtrack, as every other track is a certified bop. There isn't a single other track that I don't want to listen to. I'd go as far as to say it's even better than Sonic CD's soundtrack. The American one, that being. Complementing Sonic the Hedgehog 2's amazing sound is amazing graphics. Bright, colorful, and absolutely energetic, it makes each level stand out, a far cry from every other stage aside from the first one having like 2 or 3 colors to work with. Speaking of, Sonic 2 features 11 zones, with much larger levels to boot. However, to compensate, each zone usually has 2 acts instead of 3, with the exception of Metropolis Zone, which has 3, and Sky Chase, Wing Fortress, and Death Egg Zone, which only have 1 act apiece. Starting us off is Emerald Hill Zone, which is a lot like Green Hill Zone, however this time it came down with a bad case of being better due to the fact that it's much faster and it has corkscrews, only marred by having a boss you could easily beat with your eyes closed. Chemical Plant is an excellent zone, much better than Marble Zone, and especially Collision Chaos. What's more, the openness and all the boosters allow the Genesis to really flaunt that blast processing they touted so much. The only real problem is forcing the player to have to slow down near the end lest they fall and die like a blue dope. Aquatic Ruin's a fun level too, especially for being the water level. In fact, if you're skilled enough, you can just skip the water entirely. Water still sucks in this game, although not to the same degree as Labyrinth Zone or Tidal Tempest. Casino Night Zone is where another staple of the Sonic series originates: gambling. My tip: don't keep playing for a jackpot. Just go in, get your rings, and get the hell out. And the boss fight is pretty fun too, forcing the player to think fast and try to jump on top of the UFO catcher. Hilltop? I mean, there really isn't much to say about this one. It's just Emerald Hill, except it's blue and doesn't have corkscrews, and instead has sections where you have to avoid rising magma. Okay. Mystic Cave Zone is a fun one. This level gave me trouble as a kid, especially in Act 2 where they introduced the infamous Pit of Spikes. Fall down here and you're finished. Funnily enough, in the mobile phone ports and in the Origins collection, this became the entrance to Hidden Palace Zone, a level cut from the original game. Oil Ocean Zone is an awful level, especially considering everything about this level is either boring or frustrating, like these seahorses or these sections where it's just the barrel cannons from Donkey Kong Country, 2 years before that game came out. And the boss in this one is almost note for note the same boss from Hilltop, except the oil can't hurt you on its own. Following that is Metropolis Zone, a fitting name because it's the only zone with 3 whole acts. And in this one, it's not the lava or the falling platforms that makes this one a pain, it's the 3 types of enemies: Asterons, Shellcrackers, and Slicers. Now Asterons aren't too bad, easy to spot and even easier to avoid. Shellcrackers, however, are not only hard to jump over considering their metal claw can own you as soon as you're trying to jump onto a ledge, but the hitbox freaking cheats! As in, even if you jump on its back, you still take damage. What's more, every time you spot one, it's usually under an incredibly low ceiling. But even he doesn't compare to the Slicer, who snipes you the instant, the minute, the frame he comes on the screen, and the claws follow you. Seriously, Slicers. All my homies hate Slicers. Not helping is the boss, who's really more annoying than difficult. Sky Chase is pretty fun, even though guiding the plane can be a bit awkward, as up and down move the plane's y-axis fine and dandy. Moving on the x-axis requires you to run to the other side of the plane before it will move. It sounds a lot harder than it actually is. Wing Fortress is another one-act zone, and it can be pretty nerve-wracking, considering you're always moments away from plummeting to your doom. Here's a tip to cut down on time. At the start, get a shield power-up, and just after the first section where you jump between the bars and the floating platforms, you'll come across these propellers where you're supposed to go up and left. Run into them with the shield and use your invincibility frames to run right through and jump onto the moving platforms on the other side. Another tip, let go of the D-pad right when you get launched by these things, because holding right will cause you to plummet into the pit below. The boss of this stage can be rather annoying too, but it's nothing too controller snapping, but make sure you don't take too long on this stage, because the cutscene that plays right after doesn't stop the timer, and trust me, when you're a kid struggling through this game and you got this far on your last life and you lose it because the cutscene took too long, you'll have what I like to call the scream curd round the block. Death Egg Zone is the final level, and it's by far the shortest. Rather than having to make a trench run, you instead have to fight the 2 final bosses back to back with no rings. Robosonic is a piece of cake. Just hold your spin dash until you get 4 hits in, let go, and jump over as he makes his way to the other side of the screen. Then jump on him 4 times to score the final 4 hits. Beat him, and you not only find out that Dr. Robotnik has not been skipping leg days, but he has what has to be the toughest boss in weight, the Death Egg Robot. While it's slow as molasses, your nerves are a real threat considering not only do you have no rings, but 1 pixel touches those claws and it's back to the start, and you have to fight Robosonic again. Afterwards, Sonic rushes out of the exploding Death Egg, leaps down to Earth as Tails makes the save with the tornado to prevent Sonic from falling to his doom. What a guy. Now, while you can already be Supersonic by the end, making Tails' efforts seem moot, I don't do that for 2 reasons. 1, I like the camaraderie between Sonic and Tails, and the ability to show that without a line of dialogue will always catch me the feel-goods, and I would rather not spoil that. And number 2, in order to do that, you have to get the Chaos Emeralds, and I'm not going to mince words here, getting the Emeralds blows in this game. While yes, you get more opportunities thanks to needing to cross a checkpoint with 50 rings rather than the end of the stage itself is, the half-pipe. I know this was impressive in 1992, but these days it's just not good. Mainly due to the fact that the depth perception is awful. What's more, if you're going after the emeralds, be sure to leave Tails at home, because in these special stages, he does more harm than good. Not only does he lag behind, but these stages require precise movement. So yeah, the MacGuffins suck to get in this game, but at least there's incentive in the form of Supersonic. Get 50 rings and jump, and you've essentially got God mode. Twice the speed, twice the jump height, and invincibility. Hell yes. Although the downside here is not only can you not control when you transform, as jumping at all after the 50th ring is collected makes you transform, but it's much harder to control, and it drains rings, leaving you defenseless when the time runs out. All in all, this game takes everything about the original game and cranks it up to 11. While it can get a little frustrating near the end, this is a much better game than Sonic 1 and especially Sonic CD. I feel like the best comparison is Super Mario Bros. 3, and while that game is great, Sonic 2 just barely edges it out. But Super Mario World is still a better game than Sonic 2. That's why my final rating for this game is a pizza from a local pizzeria out of 10. Sure, it can get a tad uncomfortable near the end, but it's nothing if not a good time. I had fun with it, and so might you. But we have one more game to go in this marathon. Or is it 2 games? Be sure to tune in next time with... Okay, who's playing Final Fantasy VI? Anyways, God bless.